Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for taking the time for joining our session titled How Context is Shaking Up the Industry. My name is Chance Johnson. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Integral Ad Science, and I hope to share with you some insights around innovation happening in contextual advertising. So there's no question we've seen a worldwide content boom, and this is especially difficult for advertisers and marketers trying to keep up with emerging trends, especially with the breaking news cycle. So now more than ever, it's really important that we understand and act on the nuance of language, semantics, sentiment, and even emotional impact. And I think those items are taking center stage when we're deciding where to spend media dollars. So going back, 2019, Integral Ad Science made a big investment by acquiring a company called Admantix. This enabled us to build the technology to shift from what was binary brand safety, a blunt tool, blunt instrument, into the scalpel of customizable brand suitability. And as we're seeing a world without cookies in the future, as cookies get deprecated, we think this is more important than ever to talk about as an overall marketing strategy. So we're very lucky today to be joined by Mirza from Diageo, who's going to share some very specific insights about what they've done with contextual advertising and how they're using that information to drive better connections with their customers. But before we do that, I want to just jump into a little bit of data. So previously we had run a customer survey to get a better understanding of how consumers feel about the ads that they see. And the results were extremely compelling, and I want to set the stage before we get into the questions to share some of this data with you. So in this online survey, we wanted to get a sense of understanding the types of ads that consumers want to see. What do they feel most comfortable with, and what is the impact on the brand when they see those ads in positive environments? So start at a high level. We found that 70% of consumers think that contextual advertising relevance, this is whether an ad is relevant to the page, is important and actually has a positive relationship with that brand, 70%. And then if you double click on that, most consumers want to see ads that match the content of a page. So 74% of consumers are telling us as advertisers, they want to see ads that align with the content that they're currently reading. And one step further, consumers don't just prefer contextual relevance, it actually impacts their perception. So 72% of consumers say their perception of an online ad in that particular brand is impacted by the surrounding content of the page. So the vast majority of consumers in the world are impacted by the content of a page along with the ad that they see. And so we feel strongly if advertisers and marketers are not taking the content of a page into consideration when determining where to spend their money, that's a missed opportunity. And I think we're talking to somebody here, Hannah, who probably agrees with some of that data. Hi, Hannah, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me, Chance.
Listen, the pleasure is all ours, absolutely. So before we get into the hard-hitting questions, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role within Diageo.
Of course. So I'm currently leading media operations for Diageo as part of a Center of Excellence team. This team provides the brands like Johnnie Walker, Smirnoff, Bailey's, Guinness, all of the amazing products in our portfolio, and the markets with the infrastructure needed to be brilliant in digital and media. And it's a really pivotal role between the services that we have in-house and also across media and marketing teams, and as well as our IT infrastructure, our insights department, business science, and our global agency of records, PhD as well.
All right, so it sounds like it's almost the connective tissue between a lot of the internal workings of Diageo as a business and some of the external partners that you work with.
That's right. It's definitely a team effort.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into it because everyone's here to talk a little bit about contextual, or more specifically, hear you talk about it. So we've definitely seen a rise, especially in the last 6 to 9 months. But in your opinion, what's been the root cause of the rise of contextual advertising?
So I think, while the capabilities of digital afforded us as an industry to shift to a mindset that as long as the audience was right, the context didn't matter, there was rightly some consumer backlash to that. The use and misuse of data led to a changing legal landscape on how marketers could procure and use consumer data. And while in Europe, we operate in a GDPR world, this set in motion many more markets replicating or planning to enact similar consumer protections. And at Diageo, as responsible marketers, and for all brands really, we have to put the consumer experience first. So what some may say is a shift away from unique targeting capabilities that digital has offered us, it's a welcome change. At Diageo, we take that really seriously. The importance of how we show up, where we show up, and showing up in a way that respects the community we serve is critical to our success.
So that's helpful. So as you've seen this acceleration, were you prepared? And I guess what I'm asking is, was Contextual new to you as a business? And I know as an industry, Contextual is something that's been around for a while, but it seems like we've really leaned in and focused on it more. Is that something that you had been doing for a while at Diageo?
Yeah, you're right. It's not new to us, and it's actually something that we've, been quite proud and we pride ourselves on. We believe in having a category-leading reputation mindset, and a big piece of that was building out a global trusted marketplace of publishers. This ensures, that we always know where we're showing up in terms of our media buying. It ensures, importantly, that we show up to, legal purchase age audiences only. And as a, regulated industry, that's really critical to us.
And so, and that's helpful. And I'm sure what a lot of people want to hear is, what have been the results? Has it been successful?
Yeah, definitely. We, have different themes for the brands that we work with. We, have different cultural associations. We do a lot of work with Guinness with their focus on Six Nations and rugby example. We need to show up in appropriate places that extend that sponsorship and partnership we have. And, conversely, for Bailey's, we have very different proposition and very different positioning. So we need to make sure that, certainly the audiences are still relevant, but of course the product and the environment that it fits is much more resonating to consumers if it feels logical and it shows up in the space that feels like it's a fit for that brand. I think we would feel something's misplaced if it's showing up in the wrong environment, and that's the kind of beauty that contextual targeting offers us, that if we go about finding and sourcing more of the right environments that fit the profile of the brand, we're going to have a better response rate from the consumers who see our ads.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have a specifically unique challenge. Not only is there a significant number of brands, each with a different sort of culture and suitability appropriateness, but you're also dealing with some legal regulations that many advertisers don't. So this approach with this trusted publisher marketplace, has it driven significant results? Has it driven change to the business outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think that we have a stronger performance by showing up in the right spaces. I think as an industry, contextual is so critical to the planning choices we make as marketers, and where that's kind of come into focus, I guess, is that the premium publishers are generally the better content and a little bit more expensive. And so as we think about the challenge of getting the right pricing as well, it's a big facet. And how do we think about monetization of the longer tail, and in particular the challenges around user-generated content for some of our brands, and the propensity for risk that without sufficient oversight as marketers, you might show up in the wrong context. So I think from a performance standpoint, we can't underestimate the value equation around the cost of professionally produced context versus user-generated context, and getting the balance right there. And at Diageo, we have always been quick to challenge ourselves with how do we do this in the right way? How can we show up better? What are the models we use? And it's led us to a lot of the work we're doing with the WFA and in particular with the Global Alliance for Responsible Media. And as a founding and active member, we keep pushing for more of the right content and more safeguards to exist around that. So, you know, the good news is we are having an impact and the industry is changing, but it's a long marathon, not a sprint. And, you know, we're incredibly proud of that work. But the challenge, I think, is, you know, getting more companies like yourselves, a really critical part of that journey, to help to get good quality content, the right kind of context, monetized for our brands, and it's a slow and progressive agenda, but we're making headway.
Yeah, and you had mentioned something that stood out is you're always there's this pursuit of how do we show up better, this ongoing battle of like we can always improve even if you've had some level of success. So as you look a little bit forward into the future, what are you thinking about what's next and how you can continue to improve the suitability alignment and the contextual alignment for your particular brands?
Yeah, we're at the early stages of testing some targeted topics from an inclusion list perspective, using technology to find more of the content we want to have adjacency with. I can't share the topics yet, but watch this space. We've got some new news on the horizon there.
That's great. I'm sure we'll all be have our eyes peeled. And you know, part of the reason why I'm sure everyone's here is to not only hear about what you've done that's been successful, but maybe you can offer some advice to some of the brands that are now just looking at contextual and what they could potentially do to form stronger connections with their customers.
I think definitely getting your agency involved, I think, is really critical. You know, one of the things we've just been working through is, you know, really understanding what is the role each of our brands culturally have, and, you know, the exploration of that with our new agency, PhD, who started on our business in July 1st. We have fresh eyes looking at it, and it's given us the ability to relook at the ways of working from the ground up on this project, I guess. And one of the most exciting pieces that we've just completed is the rebuilding of our exclusion list. And it's such a huge opportunity, and I would take it as an action today that everyone should do the same. You know, as more often than not, these lists might have been built on many years ago, new terms added, often very few removed, and the world's changed since they were first drafted, and we need to make sure that our lists were representative of the values that we have and the audiences we wanted to reach. And the outcome of that project is really that we're confident now we have a list that is much better, it's fit for 2020, and we've got the governance in place to ensure that that remains true. And we know we can't be complacent with that. We need to keep leaning in and stepping up in the space. And I think that engaging, you know, third parties into that process helps to keep it fresh and makes it really something that we want to always challenge ourselves and stretch ourselves forward. And I would implore others to do the same.
Yeah, I'd have to second that. I mean, I think so much with inclusion lists gets built up over time, and it actually becomes a real significant blocker to scale and to fill up campaigns. And actually, contextual has the ability to do quite the opposite. You're able to be very specific about what you find appropriate and what's suitable for a brand, and able to reach those consumers at a much higher scale. So I definitely piggyback on that statement. That's great advice. Hannah, we appreciate your time. I hope everyone's found this information very useful. I know I have. You can always find more information about contextual advertising with IAS on our website with many of our folks. So feel free to reach out. And again, thank you so much.
You're welcome.